Halo, the series, Season 2, will be hitting Paramount February 8th of this year, which is, from their time of recording, is freaking 2 weeks away, man. 2 weeks. 2 weeks from, I think it's 2 weeks from yesterday?
It is. It's February 8th, because I was just putting together the script.
2 weeks from tomorrow. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that is coming out, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of excited for that. I don't know what. Have you watched all the previews for that?
I have watched all the previews. I watched the most recent trailer. I kind of knew somehow, I can't remember where, but obviously they put out that it was Reach themed. That's where the story's going. So I'm like, okay, that's probably the only thing that will probably get most people back on board with this show.
Yes.
You say the words Fall of Reach and people will be like, okay, I will watch this season to see what you guys do.
Yes.
So that's a great choice by them. Obviously
Agreed.
very deliberate, I imagine. I'm curious to see how they're going to do it based on like how season 1 was so split up in terms of the storylines. And I was like, okay, are all these people... I took a look at the cast today, and okay, there's a lot of recurring cast. And a couple of new characters. So I'm like, okay, they're gonna have to pull these people in. Is there a time jump? Is there a significant period of time between season 1 and season 2?
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because season 1 kind of felt like, okay, skirmishes, small battles, nothing major, and then okay, we're delving all into like a planet being essentially wiped out. So it's exciting, very exciting. I think, to be honest, I'm pumped to see how it goes. To be honest, and I imagine they'll up their game. So we'll see.
I would hope so. It's well, I mean, I guess Fall of Reach was kind of assumed to be where we're going, right? I think, regardless of how the season 1 went, I think that was like, well, we got to go. You got to go there, right? Eventually.
But they introduced Reach and talked about it a lot. So like, and that's where there's like.
Right.
That was base camp, for lack of a better term, of
yes,
UNSC and the characters in the show. So
yeah, the weird thing I felt about season 1, aside from all the other things I said, was it took, obviously it's not canon, but it took place in 2552. So like it would be very strange for them to change like when Fall of Reach, like what year it happened, right? That would be very strange.
Well, the year doesn't matter anymore. Dates, times, none of that matters.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But like at the same time, it'd be like one of the things like, why did you like if they said Fall of Reach was 2563? Like why would you do that, right? You know, that wouldn't make it. Plus 2552 is supposed to be like the 7 thing, 2 plus 5. I don't know, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah, okay.
But it felt like season 1 was, they did all the flashbacks too, but like it felt like season 1 was a lot earlier in the timeline than 2552. Like it felt like maybe more like well, I guess they had Soren in, so maybe that was part of it. But I just like the feel of it I got from it was more like mid-war, kind of like what's the Cole Protocol kind of time frame, which of course was when not Soren, but when the Rebel was, right? That was the story. Yeah. So that was like 2535, if my extensive lore memory is correct.
That is still early days for. I mean, well, I know you're right. It's a very long war because what was first? Chris Con was 25 to 25 or
25 24 25 25. So basically, 25 25 to 25 52. Everything has to be those 5s and 2s and
5s and 7s, all those numbers. Yeah,
right.
So like, it is it is very interesting because obviously it's a very slow war based on the fact that these are 2 alien species in the massive areas of space, not really knowing where fucking anybody is, and just kind of slowly bumping into each other. So like, it takes time to disseminate, like, to gather how do you gather intelligence on an alien fucking race, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I can see it just being even whatever the year is, but like at a certain point you have to be like, well, where are the forces being committed to actually fight, as opposed to a group of dudes over here just getting totally wiped out. I mean, show an actual fight would be great. And obviously we're going to see a planetary defense, so like, I hope it's not just a whitewash. I hope it's a good fucking scrap. With the obvious outcome of Reach being fucking annihilated, because you need that to set up the tone of putting humanity on this big back foot, and hence you get desperate measures. Do you know what I mean? Things become allowable that weren't before. I mean, maybe we'll see Halsey come back into the forefront because they quote unquote need her. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I want to see what they do with it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was kind of what I was going after, though. Was like, despite the fact that these two seasons are time frame probably going to be very close to each other, the season 1 felt like it was a long time ago in terms of the war timeline, even though I guess it wasn't.
What was the year in season 1? Did we know?
2552.
It was 2552,
Yeah,
and
that's
season
what I
2
mean.
is also set in 2552.
Well, they haven't said, but I mean, again, I'm assuming they're not going to do something insane. Like they would purposely piss off the fan base at that point. Like that number doesn't mean anything to anyone except the fans who have been fucking complaining about lore shit and canon all the time. Like that would be just like the most nonsensical thing to change. It's already non-canon anyways, but it's interesting because I get the feeling from both the trailers and then also from the little bit I've heard from kind of the interviews with Pablo Schreiber, and I think it may have just been him. It may have been Kiki too, but I think it was just Pablo Schreiber, the Master Chief. That the tone is much more in line with what I expect the tone of Halo to be. I think I've said this before, is that kind of the Master Chief doesn't carry the emotional weight of the show, or not the show, of the games, or of the lore, really. He is, in the books, he has more going on, but really he's still just the vessel that's carrying the plot. The emotional weight is carried by everyone else, right? It's carried by all the characters, Cortana, Halsey, what's his name? Captain Keyes. Miranda Keyes, everyone with a face, basically, right? It's carried by them. That's where the emotional weight of the story. That's like the you get the feels. You don't really get a lot of that from the Chief. You get a little bit of the interaction of him, but you don't get that from him because he has his helmet on. You can't see his face. So all those supporting characters are the ones carrying that whole emotional weight, and like the feel of Halo, at least particularly in the first 3 games, was sort of that and they kind of went back to this in Infinite, was like that feeling of more from the perspective though of the Marines, we're fighting the good fight, you sacrifice and all that kind of thing. Like they're just they're fighting along, they're serving humanity, that kind of feeling. You really get that in the first 3 games, and again, like I said, in Infinite, where it's like, we're losing, we're on the back foot, but man, we're giving it our all, and by God, we're going to defend our planet, defend our species, kind of thing, right? And against all odds, we'll win. Is kind of the feeling I get from the first Halos 1, 2, 3 basically, and I think that's why it was so successful. Was that kind of feeling? Despite everyone says they feel like they are the Master Chief, I really feel like emotionally, like you really get all that feeling and all that love for the game from all that other stuff, all the stuff that just the little things the Marines are doing, right? They aren't even necessarily named characters, just all that kind of stuff. Is how I felt. So I get the feeling, and I'm basing this on honestly not a ton of information, but I get the feeling that is where they're going, and if they do that, I think the show will be, at least season 2, sounds like it'll be significantly better.
I Would Have Been Your Podcast, only on Patreon.